If you're a red baiter or commie hater, then tonight's dinner here at the Victoria Club should be of immense interest. The guest list apparently totals just under 100 people, and according to the organisers, they represent a wide cross-section of the Australian public. There'll be 3 speakers, all expounding, obviously enough, anti-communist themes. There'll be Senator or ex-Senator Frank McManus, leader of the DLP. He'll be talking about his opposition to communism. Then there'll be the Victorian Vice President of the RSL, Mr Bruce Ruxton. But most interest will centre on the 3rd speaker, the woman who started it all, Frankston housewife, Mrs Jennifer McCallum. Over the past few months, Jenny McCallum has been reading the thoughts of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. If only Australians would listen to him, she claims, they'd realise the takeover is imminent.
One of the things I'm going to say, Paul, is that Solzhenitsyn has warned America the Third World War is lost. Will the West make a stand to prevent a 4th World War?
What relevance does this have to Australia?
Well, surely we are tied up in this. By saying the Third World War is lost, he is obviously meaning the communists have taken over. In quite a few countries, South Vietnam, fighting can start up in Korea any day again if we believe what we read. Indonesia has an explosive situation. Thailand, the situation is hellish. Look at the map. The whole of Southeast Asia will become one creeping mass of communism.
And you think that Solzhenitsyn's writings are relevant to all this?
Well, completely. Who should know more about communism and how they work than that man? Read the Gulo Archipelago. Good God, you know, what he suffered was incredible.
Of extreme importance to tonight's dinner is this old gas oven. Without it, tonight's dinner could not have gone on. Today's industrial stoppage has meant that an electric oven could not have been used. Well, an anti-communist dinner and a major industrial stoppage on the same day, most people would see that as being coincidence, but not Mrs Jennifer McCallum. She sees something far more sinister than that going on. Mrs McCallum, you're claiming that there have been attempts to sabotage tonight's dinner. What evidence do you have of that?
Phone calls from one hysterical woman that rang and threatened me. Wretched creature, before our march in May. She rang up and in her grating, horrible voice said, "You will not have your dinner at the Victoria Club because we, and I stress we, are going on strike." Well, I sort of laughed and thought, good Lord, you know, the strike is completely nonsensical. It's putting thousands of men out of a job, thousands of men in the unions who are not communists, and there are a lot, don't want to strike, but they are still being led by the communists, and I am convinced that this dinner is being sabotaged. They hope we won't have any electricity to cook with. Well, tell them we've got gas to cook with.
Tonight's dinner, communists permitting, will actually be a fairly simple affair. Soup, roast beef and apple pie. Those guests who are game will be allowed to drink the house red, but really white wine might be more appropriate. Mrs McCallum is still worried that the commies might disrupt the dinner, and she has visions of having to run a sort of red gauntlet to even get into the Victoria Club. You don't think you're getting a little paranoid about this whole issue?
No, I'm not. I'm too damned exhausted to get paranoid about anything. I'm just sick to death of the way they work, the unscrupulous things they've threatened my son with.
What sort of things?
Well, this woman said that they were going to kidnap him, and he's 11 years of age. I've had detectives in this house from the CIB at Frankston. I was worried. I do lose some of my composure when this sort of thing goes on. I will not tolerate it.
But are you suggesting that she's ringing on behalf of some sort of communist force? Or what?
Well, she's hardly one of our supporters, is she? She's either a raving lunatic or a communist, or perhaps both.
Virtually all statistics would show that over the last 5 or 10 years in Australia that the communist menace philosophy is now outdated, outmoded, that no one believes it anymore. Aren't you just beating an empty drum?
Not at all. I realise that it is not fashionable to criticise the communists anymore. But since the 50s, communism in this country has become 10 times more powerful. And therefore, they are 10 times more the menace. They have a huge budget, millions of dollars they operate with. Communism is in every aspect of our life, and Australians sit down and accept it like a lot of gutless idiots.
And what, you're not going to?
I certainly am not, and with the support I am getting, I will fight communism regardless of the consequences of this a generation of Australians do not want to go down in history as our first gutless generation. They better get off their bottoms and do something too.